So I'm Christopher Fox, the CEO of the International Association for Dental, Oral, and Craniofacial Research with our new expanded name, but we're still IADR. And we're recording this session as part of LGBTQ History Month in October. And we thought we would take this unique opportunity as far as we know. And we have both the elected president of the IADR and the CEO as part of that community. So, Dr. Klein, let me start and ask you a question about LGBTQ individuals in the scientific space, particularly in STEM fields, dental, oral, and craniofacial research, but other STEM fields as well. What do you think the major challenges are for LGBTQ plus individuals in STEM fields?
Well, let me start by saying that I do think things have gotten a lot better even over the course of my career. So I think we're in a place that is significantly improved over where things were 20 or 30 years ago. If you're lucky enough to be in certain countries and at certain institutions, one of the questions that I was thinking about as we were talking about having this conversation is how variable people's experiences are. And while I do think that for a number of us, things have gotten so much better and more positive since the 80s or 90s. I think there are many places around the world and even around the US that's not the case. All throughout, let's say that the academic pipeline from an early age, people who are from a different background, whether that's racial minority and ethnic minority, a sexual minority, face additional hurdles and challenges. I think one of the big challenges for members of the LGBTQ community is that they're often not able to, for various reasons, to be out to their colleagues, and that places a very significant additional burden of stress on people. And so hopefully things like having this conversation can help to advance the agenda at least a little bit.
That's great. And one of the things that actually spurred this conversation is we had a Ask Me Anything program with Eleanor Fleming a few weeks ago. This is the online Ask Me Anything, and with a focus on diversity, and that conversation was obviously more specifically on underrepresented minorities and specifically African Americans. But one of the questions that came from one of the attendees from outside of the United States was, as a member of the LGBTQ community, he did not feel welcomed at IADR and in the dental research community. And that really, really struck me. Like, well, maybe we need to be doing more to making sure, particularly people in other countries that have different levels of acceptance of LGBTQ, different levels of civil rights, if you will, to IADR, because we very much want to be we are a diverse community. We want to be as inclusive as possible with all of our IADR members. So that sort of spurred this idea to have this conversation, given that it's the History Month as well, and to be more open about it. I've been CEO for 20 years, starting as executive director, title change to CEO, but I've never had this conversation. I assume most people know, but maybe some don't. So it's good to have this conversation, and it's just wonderful that we have you as president at this moment also. So Dr. Makiba Charles Ayinde, who is our Director of Science Policy, also covers our Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging portfolio. And she pulled a few facts together, which I think are very interesting, if not alarming. But there's growing evidence to suggest that LGBTQ plus people in STEM are statistically underrepresented, encounter non-supportive environments, as you were suggesting, and leave STEM at an alarming rate. LGBTQ people are 17 to 21% less represented in STEM than statistically expected and are less likely to major in STEM, persist in STEM, earn STEM degrees, and be in STEM occupations. Men in same-sex couples were 12% less likely to complete a STEM degree than men in other sex couples. LGBTQ people in STEM report more negative workplace experiences than do non-LGBTQ plus people, and LGBTQ people in STEM are more likely to experience career barriers, harassment, professional devaluation than non-LGBTQ plus people. And you alluded to some of that in your opening comments, but what can an organization like IADR do? What can we be doing more to have people feel more seen in our organization, but also help in their environments within their own institutions in their own countries?
Yeah, I think one of the points you bring up about visibility is really important, and something that we could and should be doing a better job of, and like you said, is what prompted this conversation. That I think both you and I assume that people know about us and our lives, but maybe a little bit less than is obvious. And so not just having one conversation, but making additional efforts to engage with people. But both you're going to be in your role longer than I'll be in mine, but neither of us will be here forever. And so putting in place structures that enable people to have these conversations comfortably. And I think for us coming from the US, which despite some of the backsliding that's going on here, is still relatively better than many other places. It's also really important for us to engage with people from other countries and hear from them what would be helpful to them. And I imagine that we'll encounter a range from people saying that just hearing about what's going on is important, all the way to, can you connect me with resources that might help with issues around safety or immigration or things like that.
Mm-hmm. And I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also acknowledge intersectionality of minorities and Blacks and Hispanics who also happen to be LGBTQ plus. I mean, they're facing barriers from both of those communities, being from both of those communities, and I mean that is a particularly hard road to travel. And obviously, we're both white, and we have to acknowledge our privilege in that respect. But what can IDR be doing more to help those individuals that are from more than just the LGBTQ plus community, but also intersecting with racial, ethnic categories?
Yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, probably the most important thing for people like us is to listen to people from other groups and try to understand where they're coming from. I think that the challenges are that when you have when you're a minority in multiple different on multiple different axes, that impacts you more than any one of them does individually. And there are different circumstances where different aspects of yourself become more important or influence how you're perceived or how you're treated. And to me, the thing that we can do first is to acknowledge that this is important, and to see if we can either launch some conversations or programs that are gonna in a sustainable way enable us to try to help people from different groups. So in terms of intersectionality, given that traditionally it's been under addressed in academics with more of a focus on individual areas of difference, but now that we understand how having minority status in multiple dimensions can have specific, can carry with it specific challenges. That's something that we can also build in from the beginning, as we look at this.
You know, we have a strong emphasis within IADR and our American division, the AADOCR, on students and the pathways that lead one to a dental, oral, and craniofacial research. So we spend a lot of our resources there. About 25% of our membership are students. We also have a network, a Women in Science network, to support the unique issues that women in science feel, not only in their professional lives, but work-life balance issues. And that's been very successful in assisting those individuals from what I've heard. I think it's about 10 years old now. Do we need something similar or some other type of support group within IADR for LGBTQ individuals?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I think that for people who are in the earlier phases of their career, that could be something that would be a source of mentorship and support. But I also think that for people who are at the throughout the spectrum, because people who are kind of at the very senior phases of their career may also not have benefited in the early phases of their careers from some of the advances that have happened. And so for people, I think at all points of their career, to be able to talk about what their experiences were, how they confronted certain challenges, and to help each other out and support each other, I think that could be a really nice benefit that the IADR could offer.
Interesting, very good. And again, our American division probably has done more in diversity matters than IADR, but I think IADR needs to step up to the plate also. Again, Dr. Charles Allende is heading that. We have a Diversity Matters initiative. We have the program Mind the Future, which is to mentor the next a cadre of diverse scientists in dental, oral, and craniofacial research, about 10 a year. And that's been remarkably successful in helping launch their careers. And I think maybe we need to turn our attention to IADR also to help with diversity initiatives across all of IADR. And of course, that's going to vary country by country, and maybe that's something that we simply provide resources that then our local divisions can implement, or maybe it's something we need to be doing at an IADR level. But I think it's interesting to at least start that conversation, and to have it happening perhaps at our next IADR general session, which will be in New Orleans. But then after that we continue this dialogue. And I think the whole point is we want to be a very inclusive and welcoming community to all, no matter your race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, etc. Go ahead.
So yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I really like your proposal to have some conversation around this at the meeting in the spring. And I think it's not trivial for an organization like ours that spans the entire globe to do this in a way that's going to be as supportive but also sensitive as possible, and to really hear from people what they would like. It may be that people from certain communities that look at sexual minorities in different ways will have different needs, and that I think we want to understand where everybody is coming from, and not necessarily just bring the American perspective to this.
Right. Excellent point. Yeah, that's a very good point. And I think as we continue to have this conversation, we need to bring in those voices. So it's not just the president and CEO in our, gay white male status, but we need to bringing in women voices, the L and LGBTQ, the intersectionality, more races and ethnicities, so that we really do understand what the needs are of that community. And I can't pretend to know what those are, and I think we need to open up that dialogue. You spent
Mhm.
a good part of your career based in San Francisco, and that's going to be a very different experience than somebody based in Singapore or Kampala or a number of places. So we do need to have and IADR is very proud of the fact that we have a very worldview. Our membership is very diverse geographically and other aspects of diversity, and we need to hear those voices and see what IADR can do. And the goal, of course, obviously, is we're a science-based organization. We want everybody to live up to their potential, not face exclusion or harassment. We want to be inclusive of everybody so that we can advance the field. And there's lots of data to show that diversity makes a difference. Diverse teams in science have more impactful papers. They're more highly cited. They're more productive, and there's lots of measures, and we can quote that in the literature, maybe put that on some websites. But diversity is important, and it's important for the reasons that we're talking about in terms of the IADR mission to drive dental, oral, and craniofacial research for health and well-being worldwide.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that's a great closing point, that that there's evidence that diversity is important for science, and we know that diversity is important for scientists, and we want all of our members to have the same opportunities that we have, and so we want to figure out ways to support that.